guys, it's that time of year again. It's time to bake some Christmas cookies. So today I got two recipes for you. One, a chewy keto Snickerdoodle cookie, and the second one is a keto Mexican wedding cake. Now this is something I had never eaten because it was one of those things I just passed up because I went for the chocolate thing and I just thought it looked boring. But oh my god, these keto Mexican wedding cakes are melt in your mouth delicious. And both of these are only 1 carb per cookie. So let's get started. Okay, we're gonna start with the Snickerdoodle cookie first because for best results to get the chewy center, it's best to have them in the freezer for a while. So we'll make that dough, roll it all up, get it in the freezer, and then we'll make our Mexican wedding cakes. Those have to chill for a little bit, but not as long. We're starting this guy with 2 sticks of butter. I use salted. You can use unsalted. Just add like half a teaspoon of salt to your cookie dough. I just hate buying 2 kinds of butter. I always seem to be out of the one I need at the time. We're doing 240 grams or 1.25 cups. I'm doing classic Monkfruit Erythritol blend. You can do straight erythritol. You need a 1-for-1. All my recipes, unfortunately. I don't want to deviate from this because it's going to be a whole relearning experience. One of these days, I'll be able to have time to experiment with recipes with just using like a tiny bit of stevia or a tiny bit of sucralose or something like that. But right now, I don't have time because you need all that bulk. It's 1.25 cups. If you use Splenda, it's like a teaspoon. You know what I mean? So it's going to be a completely different recipe. So you got to use a 1-for-1 sweetener. And allulose doesn't work in most baking because it holds on to too much water. You can maybe swap out a tiny bit for this, but it'll brown really quick and it'll be really soft. So if you add too much, it'll be so soft they'll just break apart and fall apart. I'm gonna do a whole video on sweeteners eventually, but a lot of you guys ask and I try to answer all your comments, but it's not easy. We're gonna beat this until it's super light and fluffy. That's the way to get non-grainy baked goods, and it also helps with the cooling effect of the erythritol. While that's whipping, we're going to get the rest of our dry ingredients going. I used a variation. I tried to take some things out of this and replace them with other things. Kind of my base from my chewy, soft chocolate chip cookie recipe. I tried following a Snickerdoodle recipe and it wasn't coming out soft and chewy. So I went back to my original recipe. So it's 60 grams of whey protein. You should be sifting all this. The whey just doesn't always go through my sifter. I've heard you can use egg white protein for whey. I have not tried it. I would think you'd get a crispy cookie, but I could be wrong. The keto baking is completely different. Things happen that you don't understand. It's not taught anywhere yet, so it's all experimenting. I've also heard beef protein isolate works, and I have tried pea protein. I just don't like the taste, so it's up to you guys. 42 grams of coconut flour. So how I get my crispy cookie is I use a tablespoon of beef gelatin, and then I use 2 teaspoons of arrowroot starch. Probably get away with using some cornstarch if that's what you have on hand, but I believe you need more arrowroot than cornstarch. You have to look up the ratios. And then just 2 teaspoons of baking soda. Instead of the gelatin, you might be able to use a bunch of xanthan gum, but I found that you don't really get chewy with just xanthan gum. You get kind of gluteny, not chewy. And that's it. Sift and whisk, and then we are just adding 1 egg and some vanilla extract. Scrape this down. Got some whole butter there. I think in the original chocolate chip cookie I said like 8 minutes, something like that. You want to whip this for quite a while until it's super fluffy and it's no longer grainy. And then the last thing we need is just cinnamon and sugar, which I found the best was the erythritol, but I did do it with allulose and Boca Sweet. They both worked, but it seemed to make them spread more. Don't know why. It's just, that's what happened. So just so you know, they're going to be more flat and less chewy. You're probably going to have to cook them a little bit less so that they don't become too crispy. So there's a 1/4 cup of 48 grams of classic Monkfruit erythritol and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. So we're gonna roll our balls in some cinnamon sugar and then get them into the freezer. That looks super light and fluffy to me. We need 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And we're gonna add our 1 egg. And then our dry, and we're gonna scoop and roll. You don't want any pockets of just butter, because that'll severely misshapen your cookies, because the butter pocket will melt and your cookie will be all weird and spread out. And make sure you're nice and mixed. You can just keep going on the mixer if you want, but time to scoop them. So the nice thing is you can do all this ahead of time, freeze them, throw them in a Ziploc bag, and then just pull them out and bake them when you need to. So you can do this way ahead of time. What I do, I domed mine a little bit in my smallest scooper. I just scoop them all and then roll them all in the cinnamon. Should get about 24 cookies. Apparently I took a guess when I did my recipe and didn't actually count how many cookies I got. Getting way more than 24. I was doing a bunch of experimenting with like different cook times, freezer, fridge, different sweeteners I was rolling in. So I kept just scooping some, doing an experiment, scooping some, doing an experiment. So I probably lost count at some point and I just estimated 24. We'll see how many we get. Okay. Roll. You saw last year's videos, you know I suck at rolling cookies. I do have 5 other Christmas cookie recipes. I'll link them up there for you. I guess it's just best to do one at a time. I'm trying to make it quicker, but I think it's just making it harder. And it looks like we got 32 cookies. These are best if they're frozen for, I found, at least 30 minutes. Like I said, you can freeze them completely and cook them from frozen. It'll be good to go. Oh, popping these into the freezer. Bye for now. Now to clean up, and we'll get on to the Mexican wedding cakes. Now, like I said, this Mexican wedding cake, I had never eaten one before. I had never even made a Mexican wedding cake. So when someone had asked, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's kind of boring, but whatever. So I look up a recipe, and I notice it is almost exactly the same as my whipped shortbread cookie. So I didn't have to change much because I had already figured that out. The only difference was adding in crushed pecans. You can do pecans, walnuts, and I think someone even had almonds too. So you can probably do any nut you want. The recipe I looked up, though, was super simple. It was just butter, powdered sugar, flour, and the pecans. And that was it. And I made it using my whipped shortbread recipe, which is very similar to that. And it came out, like, perfect. The only thing is it wasn't domed. Like a traditional Mexican wedding cake has, like, the dome on it still. But it was so good. I tried a couple different things to get it to keep its shape a little bit more, but I could not get it to completely stay in the shape of the dome. And I did not want to add more flour or anything to it because it was so good and melt in your mouth that I didn't even want to mess with the recipe. So, it doesn't look exactly like a Mexican wedding cake, but it tastes amazing. Now, my original recipe was only 1 stick of butter. I am tripling it because I love this cookie so much and I want like 30 something of them. So I'm doing it times 3. So 3 sticks of softened butter and then 90 grams of powdered sweetener. You can probably use Boca Sweet in this. I would not suggest allulose because it'll be too soft. 90 grams. We're going to beat this until it's super light and fluffy, just like our other cookies. I bought a new Monkfruit Erythritol blend powdered, and just like the off-brand Not Locanto I bought of the other 2, Classic and Golden, they both are more powdery. While that's going, we're going to weigh out our dry ingredients, which I already got 120 grams of Unflavored Whey Protein Isolate, and the only other thing I need is 45 grams of coconut flour. Should be 6 tablespoons. And so those 2 things, and then we need 3/4 of a cup of chopped pecans. I have some already here, but I'm going to make some more. All I do here, put it in a bag, crush them up like this. Quarter cup is 28 grams, so should be 74. Oh, I actually might have enough to write, right? 28 plus 28 is 56. It's another 28, 66. No, I can't do math. 84. Oy vey. Still have enough though. So I still have some chopped here. I just started with Great Value pecan pieces. I got these to make pecan pie easier. Then you just put it in a Ziploc and roll it with a rolling pin and you can get it all nice and crushed up. Or you can use a food processor. This does have to chill for a little bit if you want some dome on it, so they're not completely flat. But you can throw them right in. They still turn out delicious. They just are a little bit flatter of a cookie. Still quite a bit of butter just hanging on the side, so we're gonna whip it a little bit more. I'm gonna do 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla. And I almost forgot, we still do need a little bit of xanthan gum in our mix here. 3/4 of a teaspoon. We're gonna let this mix up a minute and get that in our dry ingredients. Add all your dry ingredients. Until it forms a dough. We're going to mix in the pecans by hand. Okay, we're going to do the same scooping with these, only we don't need to roll them. We're just going to keep them as they are, and they're going to go in the fridge. Once we're done with that, we can preheat our oven to 325 for our Snickerdoodles and get those baked. Can't wait to make cookies with my kiddo. $33. I got 35 last time. That's okay, because I'm putting them in packs of 3 for the case, so that works out good. So into the fridge, and I'm going to preheat my oven to 325 for the Snickerdoodles. Okay, let's bake some cookies. So you want to put these pretty far apart. They do spread. The biggest trick to these is to not overbake them. If you do, they will not be soft and chewy. They will be crispy. So I found the best time directly out of the freezer is 13 minutes in my electric oven. Go under rather than over on these cookies. I can't vouch for any other ovens. Everybody's ovens are different, but make sure they don't roll before you put them in. Otherwise, they will roll into each other, and then when they spread out, you'll have one big cookie. I'm going to start with 6 minutes. And then I'm going to turn it, give it another 6, and see if I need that one more minute. Okay, if you did it right, they should look like that, or even more like a ball. Whoa, I'm only going to do 6 more. Okay, this is 12 minutes. You do not want to overbake them at all, so I'm going to take them out now. You just want them a tiny bit cooked around the edges and still very soft in the middle. Gotta let them cool completely before we move them. I'm going to get a tray ready for our Mexican wedding cakes. I'm going to turn the oven up to 350. I'm not going to bake all the same ones all at the same time right now. Do that later. So once the oven's up to 350, we'll get some Mexican wedding cakes in. Unlike the Snickerdoodles, these don't spread too much. So you can do 3 by 2 and straight into the oven. And these I found out, let's see, 8 minutes. So 4 turn them forward at 350. Now while you're waiting on the Mexican wedding cakes, we gotta sift some powdered sweetener. It works with erythritol and powdered Monkfruit erythritol. Boca Sweet is what I've been using. It is very expensive, but it has no aftertaste whatsoever. I hate this stuff because it's expensive, and it is like the clumps are hard as a rock. It's crazy. Like you have to sift every single little bit of it because it's so hard. But there's no cooling effect or anything. Powdered allulose. I've used a powdered allulose monk fruit blend. I won't say the name of it, but I used it for frosting, and it made my cake wet. Like, I don't know if it's because my cake is so moist that the allulose like draws out the moisture of my cake or something, but allulose holds on to water. So I feel like if you dust these in allulose, it might get wet after a while. But that's just a theory I have. My allulose isn't very powdered, so like I'm not going to use it as a powdered sweetener. And I'm not gonna blend it in a blender. I don't got time for that. I barely have time to breathe nowadays. So you can do whatever you'd like if you have a powdered sweetener you prefer. But I found the Boca Sweet hits most of the marks. I bought like 7 and got it for a little bit cheaper. But you're gonna need quite a bit of powdered sweetener. I didn't weigh this. Just sift out what you think you're gonna need. You can sift some more if you want. You're gonna be doing it batch by batch. So now this is about a cup probably. We'll see how far it gets us. Hey, that's been 4 minutes. We're gonna turn them another 4, and we're gonna pull them out. We don't want to overbake these either. Okay, that is 8 minutes. So, barely want them cooked. But you'll notice there's butter pooling. You want that all to get soaked back up. And once it does, and it's a little bit cool, you want to give it its first dunk in the powdered sweetener. The original recipe said to do it right away, but our baked goods need to cool a tiny bit because they're really fragile right now. They'll soak up that butter and get a little bit harder, and then you can dunk them into the powdered sweetener. Okay, all the butter is pretty much dissolved. They're just warm. I'm gonna give them a little dunk in there. Gentle with them still. Powdered erythritol does coat a little bit better, but I don't really like straight powdered erythritol or Monkfruit erythritol even. You're gonna give another dunk later too. Back to give these another little dunk. I'm gonna let everything cool completely. Show you the Snickerdoodles now that they're getting cool. This is how you want them to look. So they're nice and soft in the middle. We're gonna eat that one, it looks so good. But it's like, it's gonna be soft and chewy. We'll be back in a while to try these. We get a good break. Like super soft and chewy in the middle. There's like air pockets in there. Super soft. Super buttery. If the erythritol cooling does bother you, it's gonna happen on these. It's a little bit cooling. Like I said, you can do the Boca or allulose. These might have a little bit more spreading. They're really good dipped in some milk. Or nut milk. Mexican wedding cakes. I'm gonna grab, I have 1 pack left in my case. I'm gonna eat those and take the rest home for Adam. So after being in my case, still have a decent amount of powdered sweetener on them. Still look like Mexican wedding cakes. I bet they're still delicious. Can't wait to eat one. I was on the phone with Adam. I told him I made these, like, bring some home. Gotta bring him a couple home. They are, like, melt in your mouth. It's so hard to describe. Like, I didn't think that they were going to be that good. Like, I'm like, what's the big deal with these cookies? But they're really, really good. They're just so soft. And they just, like, melt in your mouth. They're so good. I literally got to stop myself from eating all this stuff all day long. So hard. I hope you guys try out some of my Christmas cookie recipes this year for your holiday festivities. These ones are so easy to make with your kids. They'll love rolling them out and baking them up. I'll definitely link my other ones. I have a sugar cutout cookie, a thumbprint cookie, butter cookies, peanut butter blossoms, and my whipped shortbread. So you now have 5, 6, 7 different kinds of cookies, and I have 2 more on the way, so stay tuned for that. Don't forget to check out my Amazon links and the blog link to the full recipe in the description box below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And as always, I'll be back with many more keto dessert recipes. Bye guys.